Merry Christmas, Health Rebels. And whether you are actually taking a break from the festivities to listen to this episode today, or you're just catching up and now starting to think about the new year and what it means for your health journey, I thought today was the perfect day to chat about making a fresh start. Because I don't know about you, but there is nothing I love better than the chance to wipe the slate clean and start over. So, whether you've been a picture of health all season long and want to level up even more next year, or whether you feel like you are limping to the finish line and need a way to get yourself back on track, this is the episode for you. Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast, formerly known as the Ditch the Carbs podcast. Once again, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I am the founder of Thinlicious and the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And if this is your first time listening, then you should also know that I am pretty much obsessed with one thing: helping women over 40 create freedom in their lives by transforming your health. I like to think of it as starting a health revolution, and that's really what this podcast is all about. It is about the freedom to feel your best, the freedom to not be controlled by food addictions ever again, and the freedom to confidently pursue all your big goals and dreams because your health and your weight are no longer holding you back. And if that gets you excited, then you'll probably like it here. We are health rebels, and we are not afraid to question the status quo or do it a little differently and forge our own path. But around here, we are also all about progress, not perfection, about making good health a lifestyle, not a diet, and about changing your mindset to free yourself from the all or nothing black and white thinking that has likely tripped you up in the past. Because honestly, it doesn't work. And that's why today I'm so excited to dig in and talk about how to start fresh and get back on track, and about what to do if you feel like you have completely fallen off the wagon. Because frankly, it's easy to do over the holidays, isn't it? Between all the comfort food and the neighbors delivering home-baked goodies every 10 seconds and the calorie-laden cocktails and even the emotional eating that tends to rear its ugly head this time of year, it's not hard to find yourself going totally off the rails. Or maybe you just intentionally chose to give yourself a break during the busy holiday season, knowing that you could pick up where you left off come January. Honestly, that's pretty much the approach that I took this year because I knew that in this crazy season of life I'm currently in, good enough was just going to have to do. But now, with the holidays almost behind us, I am definitely ready to start thinking about the next season. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today: how to actually keep moving forward, even when we have those moments of setbacks or those times where we feel like we are totally off track. I want to talk about how to give yourself grace while also still being accountable to yourself and to your goals. And I want to talk about how to avoid the all or nothing mentality that can so often lead us down the rabbit hole of self-sabotage and defeat. And I want to share some of my favorite tips and strategies for starting fresh and getting back on track anytime you need to. But before we dive into all of that, I think it's really important to just acknowledge one thing about this journey towards better health, and that is this: it is a lifelong journey. It is not something that has a finish line or a specific destination. It is not something that you can ever really be done with, right? And in a lot of ways, it's not even something that's always going to be linear, where you're always moving forward and always making progress. And I think that that's something that we often forget, especially when we're feeling super motivated and making a ton of progress really quickly. It's almost like we think that if we could just get started and get some momentum, then we'll be able to reach our goals, and then we can go back to doing what we were doing before. We think that if we can just lose those 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 pounds, then we'll be good. Or if we can just get through that sugar detox, then we'll be able to go back to eating the way that we were. Or if we can just get through the first month of exercising every day, then we'll be able to go back to sitting on the couch and watching Netflix or whatever it is, right? But that's not how this works. If you want to actually create lasting change in your life, you have to be willing to change your life. And I know that might sound a little bit scary, like it's going to require a lot of effort and energy, and that you're going to have to give up all the things you love and start doing a bunch of things you don't love. But the reality is that it's often just the little things, the small changes that we make to our daily habits and routines that will have the biggest impact on our health and on our waistline. And it's also the little things that start to slip us up and get us off track, right? Does that make sense? I hope so, because I think it's a really important distinction to understand. This isn't a journey that has an end point, and it's not a journey where you can just do it for a little while and then go back to what you were doing before. It's a journey that requires you to make consistent progress with the things that actually work for your body, the things that make you feel good and feel healthy and energized. Because the reality is that once you've experienced what it feels like to actually have a properly functioning metabolism and to not be walking around in a state of inflammation all the time, you don't actually want to go back to the way things were, right? Those of you who are in our program or have been doing this for a while, you understand that. I understand that. You don't ever want to go back to feeling tired and sluggish and bloated and achy. It will literally be a non-negotiable for you. But again, it's the little things, the little choices that we make every day, and the little habits and routines that we fall into that can be the easiest things to let slip. And that's when we find ourselves backtracking or we feel like we're off course, because it might not seem like a big deal to have that one glass of wine that turns into 10 glasses of wine, or that one handful of chips that turns into the whole bag, or that one super sugary coffee drink that turns into having one every single morning, right? It might not seem like a big deal at first to skip your workout for one day. And it might not seem like a big deal to go back to drinking soda or eating all the sugar and the processed foods, but it all starts to add up. And just like it took a while for your bad habits to catch up with you and for you to find yourself so unhappy with your health and your weight that you decided to do something about it to begin with, it can sometimes take a while for the good habits to really start making a difference and for the changes that you've been working so hard to create to actually become permanent. So, all that to say, I guess that's the first thing I really want you to understand, that this is a journey. It is a lifelong journey, and it's the little things that matter most, both in moving you forward and in setting you back. So, with that in mind, what do you do when you feel like you've gotten off track, or when you're feeling stuck and like you can't get your momentum back, right? What do you do when you've had a setback, or when you've been doing well for a while and then you find yourself slipping back into old habits? How do you keep moving forward, and how do you start fresh and get back on track? Well, like everything in life, guys, I'm sure this is going to be a shocker if you've been listening for a while, but it mostly comes down to mindset. It's changing the thoughts that are ultimately going to dictate your actions. And of course, at some point, you do have to change your actions, but it starts with mindset. So let's talk about a few strategies that can help you start fresh and get back on track. Strategy number one, stop beating yourself up. You've got to stop it. Just stop it. Stop beating yourself up and start practicing more self-forgiveness. Because the reality is that, man, we are so often our own worst critics, and we tend to be so much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else. And what ends up happening is that we get caught up in this cycle of self-sabotage and negative self-talk that keeps us from moving forward. We start to like go down the doom spiral, right? Telling ourselves, oh, I'm so undisciplined. I'll never be able to lose this weight. Why do I always mess things up? What's wrong with me? And it's almost like we think by beating ourselves up and making ourselves feel as bad as possible that somehow we'll be motivated to change. But that's not actually how it works, because the more negative and critical we are of ourselves, the more likely we are to just keep repeating the same patterns of behavior that got us off track in the first place. So the first thing that you have to do is literally just stop it. Stop the negative self-talk and start giving yourself more grace. And I know that might sound easier said than done, but I promise you it is a practice. It is something that you have to intentionally choose to do over and over and over again until it becomes a habit. Because the more that you can focus on the positive and give yourself credit for anything that you're doing well, the more you're going to start to believe that you're actually capable of change. And the more likely you will be to keep moving forward and to be making progress. And again, it's not linear always. And know that. Tell yourself that it's not always a straight line. It doesn't always have to be a straight line. But the reverse is also true of that, right? The more you beat yourself up and focus on all the things that you're doing wrong, the more likely you are to keep repeating those same mistakes. So that's the first thing. Just stop focusing on all the ways you've messed up and instead forgive yourself enough to move forward, right? If Christmas went off the rails for you, then let it go. Don't even worry about it. Just stop focusing on that and start focusing on what you can do moving forward. So that's the first thing. The second strategy for getting back on track is to actually reconnect with your why. And I know I've talked about finding your why on this podcast before, but it's important and one that I'm probably going to keep talking about over and over again because honestly, I think that it's the one thing that I see make the biggest difference in people's ability to actually achieve their goals and stay consistent with those healthy habits. Because when things are going well and you're feeling motivated and you're seeing progress and you're getting results, it's easier to stay committed and stay on track, right? Especially when you're seeing things happen. But then as soon as you hit a roadblock or a setback, or you have a few days or weeks where you're not seeing as much progress, or you go on vacation, or you take, kind of go off the rails, or you're not feeling super motivated, or it's cold outside, or whatever it is, right? It's easy to lose sight of why you wanted to make these changes in the first place. And so then you just kind of give up. And that's why it's really important to have a very clear understanding of why, of your big picture vision, right? Of what you want to be able to do and feel and what you don't want to have to deal with anymore. You have to connect with the emotional reasons why this journey is so important to you and why you've decided that you're no longer willing to just stay where you're at. Because when you have a strong enough why, the how will always reveal itself, right? You're listening to this podcast. Trust me, we talk a lot about how. And when you're feeling stuck or like you've gotten off track, you can always come back to that why and use it as your motivation to keep moving forward. Because I can give you the how. I do give you the how all over and over and over again. But unless you have the why, which only you can supply, it's not going to be enough, right? So if you're feeling stuck right now, or if you're worried about getting your momentum back, I want to challenge you to take a few minutes to really connect with your why. Go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes of this podcast, or read some of the books that inspired you to get started on this journey in the first place. Do something, right? Think about, why do you want this? Do some journaling. And if you don't have a clear why yet, then I really want to encourage you to take some time to think about it. Get it down on paper. This is the perfect time of year, right? To start thinking about, why do I want what I want? Because I promise you, it will make such a big difference in your ability to keep moving forward. And then once you've done that, the next step is to just start, right? Just start right now, imperfectly. Take some kind of action, no matter how small it is, no matter how imperfect your action is, but take some sort of action in the direction of your goals. And I know that might sound like a super simple and obvious thing, but honestly, I think it's where so many of us get stuck. We wait until we have a big thing, or until we're feeling super motivated, or we have this big chunk of time to really dive in and get started. And we want to do all the things. I was always that way with my New Year's resolutions, right? I would say that I was going to lose weight. And so I would have to have all the stuff in place, right? We tell ourselves that we're just going to wait until Monday, or until January 1st, and until the kids go back to school, or whatever the next thing is that we're waiting for. But the thing is, the longer that you wait to take action, the longer you wait for everything to be perfect and all the stars to align and everything to fall into place, the harder it's going to be to actually get started. And that's because when you start to build up this story in your head about how impossible it is, or how you'll never be able to do it, or how you're too far off track, or that everything has to be a certain way or doesn't count, the harder it is to do anything, right? And you start to lose that little bit of momentum that you do have. So my advice is to literally just start to take some kind of action, no matter how small, in the direction of your goals. And that might mean something different for all of us, right? Depending on what your goals are, depending on where you're at right now, depending on what you have in your kitchen. But I'll give you a few examples. So let's say your goal is to get back on your weight loss plan. Then start right now by just go to the kitchen, right? Fill up a glass of water and actually get out your phone and track your food intake today, right? Get out your app, whatever you're using, or start today if you are not on a plan, right? Start today by actually just reading your food labels and paying attention to what you're eating rather than just doing it willy-nilly. Or if you've gotten off track with working out, then start by taking a 10-minute walk around the block. Don't even change your clothes. You can walk for 10 minutes in anything, right? You don't need workout gear to do that. Just go take a walk. Or if you've been feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, like you've lost your focus and you're just kind of like floating all over the place, then take 15 minutes to do a brain dump and get all your thoughts and to-dos out of your head and onto paper. Because here's the thing, even the smallest action in the direction of your goals has the power to start creating momentum. And once you start to create the momentum, it's easier to keep it up, right? To keep moving forward and to take bigger steps and bigger steps. A body in motion tends to stay in motion, right? The law of motion, a body in motion, a body at rest stays in rest, a body in motion stays in motion. So get in motion. And because the same is true for taking action in your life. Once you get started, it's so much easier to keep going. But the opposite is also true. The longer you wait, the harder it is to actually take that first step. All right. So that's strategy number 3. Number 4, then, now that you've started and you have some momentum, is to actually create an action plan. And don't let that like throw you off, right? Because this doesn't have to be anything super elaborate or overwhelming, but it's a way for you to start to map out what needs to be done in order for you to achieve your goals. And again, this is going to look different for everyone based on what your goals are. But the key is to break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. And honestly, I think that is where it is so helpful to have an actual program or a proven process to follow. Obviously, the one that I recommend is TAS, our Thin Adapted System, because it literally shows you how to implement everything that I recommend, everything that I talk about here on this podcast in a super methodical, easy to follow, step-by-step way. And our program works in 4 phases that are all designed to help you heal your body from the inside out, right? To reverse insulin resistance and heal your gut and balance your hormones for life so that you can actually like have a life, right? And I think that sometimes those things, when you hear all of these in bits and pieces, feels really overwhelming. Like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. But we show you how to begin, right? We don't make you do everything all at once. That's why we have these different phases. That's why we break it all down. That's why we create a process for it. But the reality is that when you do that, that puts you into a place when you're healing your body for life that you actually can take it easy over the holidays and not have to feel guilty about indulging, because you know that your body is now what we call metabolically flexible and it will all be okay. And I will say this too, if you want help creating your 12-month action plan for this coming year, then I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to check out our free on-demand training video that we have available right now, which is not only going to help you map out your plan, but it's going to explain exactly how our program works, how all the phases work, and how it can help you reach all your health goals. It's called Healthy, Happy, and Free in 2024. And once again, it's an on-demand video. It's a limited time on-demand video that is totally free to watch. So all you have to do is go to thinlicious.com/video to access it. And once again, that URL is thinlicious.com/video. All right. So go watch that, create your action plan, get started. You guys, falling off the wagon is not a big deal, right? If you feel like you got off track over the holidays and you feel like, man, I really need to get myself back together, you can. That's what you do, right? Change your thoughts, stop beating yourself up, and start thinking about, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? All right. I think that does it for today. So once again, if you're listening on Christmas, then I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. If you're listening post-Christmas, I hope you had a fantastic Christmas. And honestly, I cannot wait to help you transform your health in the new year. Guys, I will see you soon.